hello, and welcome to that time of the week where I talk all about what Tinto Talks has been talking about. And of course, we're going to be talking about the responses to the 14th Tinto maps, that being on Western Africa, as you can see here. Generally, the response that I've seen from it has actually been somewhat disappointed in a way. Basically, the discontent that I've seen is not enjoying the fact that all of this area, all of the stuff around here is essentially empty. And I think, for me personally, I've always got in my mind that we're going to be getting a proper terrain map at some point, and therefore, anytime that I see these areas that are empty, I just think, well, it's not actually that bad. It's not actually empty. It will look better when we have terrain. But it's not just the emptiness visually, but also people wondering why they're not going down the Victoria 3 route of adding in all of the various non-settled peoples. Basically, instead of having a location with a population that has a culture and a religion, but they would also have something else on top of that, like Victoria 3 has, where instead of, just being an empty location with, population, whatever, it would be the Fang, or the Loango, or the Adag, or Air, or etc., etc. That these polities would exist, but not be playable, and well, we'll go into it, and I'll get onto my thoughts on this situation when we get there. But I don't know. I'm not entirely in agreement with those people. But anyway, let's get into it. Please tell me it'd be hard for Europeans to dominate the land, apart from a little bit along the coastline. It's something we'd like to achieve while still making the game interesting, yes, although it's too early to either confirm or deny, to be honest, as there are several moving parts regarding possible colonization adjustments. Of course, in a couple of days' time, we will be learning about colonization, and while I am very much not in agreement that we should be taking Victoria 3's route when it comes to the states in Africa, I think we could probably learn a bit, or take a page out of their book when it comes to how colonization works, because I do think it works pretty well there. Having colonization slowly spread out, starting off with a tiny little bit of land, and then that land spreading and growing, etc. But also in the way that they handle what you can colonize, without the ability to, protect yourself against various diseases like malaria. I think it's prophylaxis on malaria or something along those lines. Then it's going to be very difficult, basically impossible, for your armies to survive going any further inland than the coast. And I definitely would not mind seeing that kind of element be present, because while sure, having an area of the world be completely locked off to you that you're not able to do anything with, not able to conquer, not able to establish yourself in, might be historically accurate. For those people who perchance want to do world conquests, for example, they're not going to be very happy with that, because I'm sure people who want to do world conquest will be able to do them. I'm not sure they should be accommodated just fully, but I don't know. Seeing Spain own all of West Africa, or Morocco own all of West Africa, is not what I want to see, but I think it should be possible, is what I'm trying to get at. But anyway, moving on. Interesting map choices. Will Mali have a disaster, and will there be an event for Songhai? So as I said when the map post came out, Mali being very, very large, very imposing, but Mansa Musa is destined to die. I'm not sure how old he is at the start of the game, but he is, in real life, he died in 1337, and from that death came the splitting of his empire, the arrival of Songhai, and of various other states. But all we know is there will be content for both Mali and Songhai, though, as far as I was aware, it is not going to be a case of we have hit a certain date in 1337. If you are playing as Mali, enjoy your death event that is guaranteed. I don't think we're getting that. In regards to religion, I do hope y'all get rid of the animism menace that has plagued Paradox games as much as possible. So this is something we are already aware of. Animism is basically work in progress, and they've already started working on it as well. So, as can be checked in previous Tinto maps, it's going to take a bit more time to further subdivide the pagan and animist religions of the whole world, but they will be subdivided. It won't just be a large animist, everyone's in the same religion somehow, even though they never met each other, kind of situation. Animism will be split, so that's good. Can you leak some religious designs or plans for animism? Nope, just the religious distribution and the generic idea of why we made the distribution. The religious mechanics and features will be discussed in a future Tinto Talks. Of course, we're all looking forward to that. Can I cause inflation in other countries when playing as Mali and sending my ruler on a pilgrimage? And Pavi is saying here, the inflation caused by the pilgrimage of Mansa Musa, when he, went to Mecca, it's still present in 1337. Obviously, in EU4, unless you are a very specific country that has gotten specific flavor about them, you are almost guaranteed to start with zero inflation regardless of your country. That's not going to be the case in EU5, and specifically the country or countries that Mansa Musa passed through or stayed in during his pilgrimage to Mecca, there's going to be inflation there, as he just dumped a whole bunch of gold there, the rich bastard. Where are the Eastern Fulbe? There aren't any Fulbe minorities throughout the Sahel as far as I can tell, despite them being a nomadic people who lived all the way from Senegal to Cameroon, with this map showing where Ful is spoken, etc. So, they'd like to have content portraying the Fulbe migrations, which happened during the game's time frame, but we think that this is the correct depiction of these peoples for 1337. If you're a nomadic people that are moving around, generally you probably wouldn't be a state on the map. Maybe this is a little bit of a hint as well on how the more nomadic tribes of North America, maybe they might not be on map at all, and only after settling those tribes would be on map, potentially. And maybe we get that same situation here, but it is they would like to have content, so it's not in at the moment as far as I can tell. So maybe that will come. Glad you didn't go for some of the absurdly high estimates for populations. These populations, however, seem a little bit low. I'd have expected Mali to breach 1 million at least. What are the sources for the populations or rationale? So they made a rough calculation of having 6 to 8 million for the region in 1337, given the historical demography that we use. From there, we use some population density databases that we have available, because it's not possible to have that for 1337, but in the end, agricultural yielding is not so different, and therefore the overall population density that may inhabit an area relative to others. And from there we adjust, removing any modern data polluting the database, such as modern cities, etc. It ended up a bit shorter than our initial calculations, so they have 5.6 million instead of the 6 million on the lower end. So it's something that they may adjust accordingly with review, so maybe we'll get a few more pops in West Africa on review. I'm not an expert in West African history by any means, but from what I do know, it seems strange to represent the Mali Empire as one single state, with when a country like France is split into all its tiny duchies. And then he goes into why that is. Pavi's response here, they wanted to portray Mali at its zenith in 1337, but after the game starts it can break into several polities. Already made sure to cover this. The player may also very well release vassal subjects as a mean to rule the periphery of the empire, while the control over the core lands is slowly being increased. So basically, it could have been set up in a similar way to France, but they wanted to basically have the big white blob, I guess, in Africa that will probably split apart when the ruler dies. Or you can, do it yourself. Some interesting international organizations here. Nope, there are none in 1337. That's kind of expected, not gonna lie. I don't know. I'm not exactly a expert in West African history myself, but I would not have expected any. Maybe something to do with the slave trade. May end up being an international organization, I guess. But that is a bit of a minefield that I will let others dip their toes into before me, for sure. Can you give us better maps of the Western Sahara as a whole? So they weren't going to share maps of the entire Sahara after the East Africa Tinto Maps is released. Maybe it's an additional midweek Tinto Maps. Because let's be honest, the Sahara there's not a whole lot going on there. There's a whole lot of sand, but very little else. Having an entire Tinto map for just the Sahara would be a little bit weak. So a midweek one, that seems reasonable to me. Netflix here having a few things to say about. Firstly, talking about Mali and its religion. 75% of the population of Mali is animist, with only 25% Muslim. In some places, only the upper class, like nobles, burghers, clergymen, are Sunni. Talking about the cultures, the blue one is Masufa. Let's actually go and have a look for the cultures here. I know it's this one. Yeah, it is this one. Okay. So the blue culture here up in Songhai, and I need to find out where I was. Bear with me. Okay, blue culture here is Masufa. So that would be... I've lost my place again. Here we go. Up in Songhai. It is a Saharan Berber culture. Yep, the light green one is Zagawa. The light green being over here in Kanembu. Yeah, that is Zagawa. As for population, the guy ends up saying here about the population of Mali. Mali's population seems extremely low. In 1327, they supposedly had a population of around 14 million and 25 million in 1350. According to whomstedifter. It's highly doubtful that Mali could have had 14 to 25 million population from the sources we've consulted, I'm sorry to say. To put it into comparison, that would make it as densely populated as France, which we are quite sure was not the case in 1337. That feels reasonable as a response to me, for sure. I think the coastal locations could be more coastal. They shouldn't be so far inland because it takes a lot of effort to explore that far into the jungle. I think it'd be much better to have smaller but wider locations on the coast, which will be representing the trading outposts. To be honest, the coastal locations are something we're not something we're very happy with. They look too gamey in comparison with the inland, which feels more organic. It's one of the things that we want to change the map review. So if we go back to this map and we find, this is probably the easiest place to see it. These locations on the coastline, yeah, they are very deep. They are going very deep inland. If these were a lot more flat and certainly more coastal, a bit more like this fish province right here instead of, these more vertical locations, that might be a better situation. So yeah, they'll probably get that changed during review. A question about Mali. Some historians argue that Mansa Musa died sometime around 1337, but the exact date and cause is unclear. Will Project Caesar have an event related to his death shortly after the campaign, or will he just continue ruling normally like any other ruler? So he will continue ruling normally as any other ruler alive in 1337. We're not going to get any death event, as I said earlier, which is good if you would like to play as Mali, keeping him alive for longer, and he is a very good ruler. Be hard to comment without fully understanding design policy behind the distinction of settled versus tribe versus grey territory. I understand there are also non-territory countries that can be represented, but we haven't seen them, don't know much about it. For starters, from a simple glance, I feel like the Yoruba should be represented in terms of their cities. So that is true. By the end of the month, they'll have some more stuff they need for the design to be fully understood, so I'll probably make some further updates in this thread according to that. And I guess this is more about the, the unsettled situation that we mentioned at the start of the video. Is there a system to portray the Sahelian dryness cycles? And really cool to have, although they're not sure yet if they have the technology available to properly portray them in game. So this is another situation where the engine update that has been hinted at a few times, it's still not done. They still can't say whether they're going to be able to change terrain, change topography, change the vegetation, etc. I really hope that technology ends up, being a thing available, because it applies in so many different areas. And this is another really good example of where it would apply. Having, the desertification of the Sahara, going into the Sahel, and the, sparse terrain turning into desert, and then, grassland turning into sparse, and then maybe it going the other way as well. The anti-desertification, if that was a thing that happened, I actually don't know. But I do think that would be really, really cool to have. Few questions. How represent the uncentralized tribes that organize states themselves in Africa during the game's time frame? In 3037, West Africa lacks some important regional players, so like Dahomey, Denkira, etc. It's kind of the rough questions you're expecting for today, and that you can't fully answer yet. Some undisclosed features they have to tackle in Tinto talks first. So, yeah, this is very telling, right? There will be some kind of... I was about to say situation, but that's obviously not the word, because that applies to something else. There'll be some kind of environment for the decentralized populations to exist within. It's... again, it doesn't look like it does in Victoria 3, but it may have some similar effect. And honestly, what kind of effect did it have in Victoria 3? While colonizing, occasionally you would get rebels. I feel like that's just the case regardless. Like, I can't remember anything else that Vicky 3 actually did. If those rebels win, then it becomes a country. Maybe. I don't know. I don't see it being a super amazing feature. It just made the map look more accurate, I guess. In general terms, I can tell you that we want to fully portray all the processes you mentioned, and also we want to make some according fixes to the setup. Poke again in a couple of weeks, by the time of the Eastern African Tinto maps. So I thought East Africa was next week, as in this Friday. Maybe it's literally just they needed to share how colonization works before we getting the information of all of this. That could be the case. Colonization is going to be a very big one. I feel like maybe colonization Tinto talks maybe should have come out before the African Tinto maps, potentially, because it is very relevant, right? Obviously, colonization, not a great thing, but it was a thing that happened, so, it's very much worth, linking them together. And, yeah, there seems like a lot of information that we could have been handed before learning about West Africa that would have made a bit of sense, and maybe a little bit less disagreements, less disappointment if they had known. But I guess we'll find out on Wednesday. What happened to the rivers? So when you zoom in, then you can see the rivers, but when you zoom out to show a larger area, then you can't see the rivers. Again, I'm going to be a broken record. I think rivers should be, visible at every zoom level, and also that, having things change depending on how much you zoom in, I don't like it. No thank you. The only thing that should change is seeing what your locations are called versus your areas are called, or provinces I should say, versus what your country is called. That's the only thing that should change on a zoom. I don't like the ability to, rivers popping in and out is just, nah. I hope that is an option, because I will turn that off. I do not like that. When you folks are doing the Tinto maps and using sources, you also look at previous and later years for the details that could be used by other Paradox teams. For example, for folks responsible for Vicky and CK. So they may take a look at CK, as they've even shared common sources and information about some regions, but in general terms, both teams prefer not to dig too much into each other's setups, as the gameplay of the games is different, and we also want players to feel like they're different, even if they cover a similar century, the one that goes from 1337 to 1453. Also, take into account that their earliest scenario is 1066. Isn't it 867 for CK3 right now? I'm pretty sure they have an earlier start in CK3 than 1066. That's their latest start date. But even so, it's a 250 to 150 year difference compared with our 1337 start date. Yeah, makes sense. Sharing some information, but obviously you can't do a one-to-one. It's just not possible. A very important question. Only came to mind because I felt something important in this map was missing, and then it clicked. How are you going to represent the slave trade? Since slaves aren't a trade good anymore, it's an important part of the economy of the region. One of the main reasons why Europeans stuck around until the partition of Africa in the late 19th century, after all. There will be a Tinto talks dedicated to slavery. That is going to be demonetized. I am absolutely sure of it. But hey, if you want to, help me out with getting over demonetization stuff, then the best way to do that is subscribe, like button, comment. So YouTube pushes my stuff earlier, and so demonetization won't hurt so much when it comes up. That'll be great. But anyway, yes, slaves are not raw materials anymore. They are not goods. They're not RGOs, but yes, they are actually pops. So that is going to help very much portray the historical context in a way more accurate way, for sure. So looking forward to seeing how they handle that. Good luck. Looking forward to the map. Come over look each later, but have some questions and suggestions and such. I thought the ruling dynasty of Benin was the House of Eweka. Who knows? They didn't actually respond to that at all. Another thing about natural harbors. Of course, natural harbors will be something that is, touched upon as the Tinto maps come out. If you have any suggestions for natural harbors and what would be suitable, then you should be writing on the forums. Can we see Mansa Musa right now? The portrait. So this is what Mansa Musa looks like. He is 57. He has pretty amazing stats. 90 administrative skill, 66 in his diplomatic skill, and 50 military skill. Very cool indeed. Glad to have to see him, for sure. Nice of them to say. But why is he so sad? He's probably expecting the I don't like 3D characters comments. I mean, do you blame them? One thing that I have mentioned quite frequently elsewhere, but also basically an idea that I got from Father Loris of Chapel Comics fame, that I think is a very good idea, is the way to make these look better is removing the background. Honestly, removing the background would help so much. Because, okay, let's take a random example of a portrait done contemporarily to this period. This here is a portrait of a young girl by Angelo Bronzino. And this kind of very monochromatic background that you see is very, very common. Now, of course, they're not all like this. Of course, we have things like Henry V here, which is on some kind of background, but it's still not a, it's not a backdrop. It's not a throne room, especially as really there's only a finite amount of throne rooms I expect to be drawn. And so when you're looking at various characters, inevitably you're going to see them being in the same freaking throne room. And that's kind of going to be a little bit crap. But, Henry II here, grey backdrop. We've got a girl here. I don't know who this is, but, it looks better. And if we had that, instead of, random throne room. One, it would make the characters pop a little bit more, right? But also, I just kind of think that might be kind of nice. Yeah, I just do. I just think it would be kind of nice. Maybe you could even change the color of the backdrop based on what the culture is, or the religion, or something along those lines. Still make it dark, though, and yeah. After that, maybe put a filter over, like a pre-render filter over the faces, and it would look really good. It could look really good. I think that is what I would prefer, honestly. Because while, like, the technology for having these characters, seeing them grow up over time, the DNA system, it's technically super impressive. But it's in that uncanny valley area. It is in that uncanny valley area where they're just, like, they're good, but they're not good enough to be good, if you know what I mean. I would like just to, yeah. That I've said my piece. I'm probably going to say it again at some point, but yeah, moving on. Is there a way of representing the wealth versus the wealth of the nations? Basically, Mansa Musa was personally a very wealthy man, but it is not reflected in Mali having an enormous income and colonizing Brazil in the 1300s. I appreciate it's a little hard, blah, 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 blah. No, that is not possible. The game is not based on characters, but is based on countries. Implementing personal wealth mechanics and making them work correctly would distract us from delivering other mechanics that we think are more important to the game. I agree. There was personal wealth mechanics in Imperator, and that was a game about countries. However, it never came up. It was just not a thing that was remotely relevant in the game. It just wasn't. There was like a various events, like befriending another character, where you could spend your ruler's wealth, but honestly, it was just not anything worth worrying about. Kind of a nothing mechanic. I'm not sad to see it gone. This makes more sense to me. So, yep, have a like on that one. Could you show the map that shows at least part of what you showed in the Maghreb Tinto map, so the humble map Frankensteins can put it together with the rest? Yes. Here is what the Sahara looks like. Vile. It looks vile. Of course, there's nothing there. There's nothing there at all. But now that it is done, then people like Jums can add on to their map here. This is currently the atlas for, Europe. I don't believe he's currently yet done one for that includes West Africa, but now that that extra map is in there, maybe we will get that in. So, yes, very nice. The developers should consider some sort of decentralized tribal states for Project Caesar, similar to what Victoria 3 does with the decentralized African peoples. Again, what is the gameplay element of that? What does Victoria 3 actually do other than show them on the map? Because honestly, they didn't play any part whatsoever. I don't understand the reason why it's necessary. The map gives the awfully Eurocentric view, no it doesn't, that there were no societies at all in these areas. There was simply a terra nullis, when in fact there were dynamic societies in most of these blank areas. There's been plenty of research over the past 50 years as a basis to start adding more content. Plus, much like Central Asia, you have population migrations as well, which could be modelled for Central and Southern Africa. I know it's called Europa Universalis, but leaving large areas of Africa simply blank is not good, especially as this issue has been handled very nicely in Vic 3. How? How is this handled nicely? All it is lines on maps in straight lines. Yo, Eurocentrism, hello? Hello, Eurocentrism, please. With a name put on them. They had no impact. Why is this such a huge deal for people? They had no impact. It's just a lines on maps with a name on it. That's all their impact. And yet this is somehow, handled very nicely. Has it? We're trying our best to have the most diverse possible setup of any grand strategy game the Paradox has ever made. I think that'll be way more clear after a few months when some more systems and mechanics are shown and discussed in Tinto talks, and also as we show more regions far from Europe. I also think there's a testimony on the level of commitment to this view on some things that we're already showing, such as the cultural design of Western Africa, or trying to deliver a map with as many as possible native location names. I don't think they're doing a bad job at all, right? This culture map that we're going to go back to proves that they are, they're doing a damn good job. Like, this is more than what could be expected, especially for 1337, right? At least in 1836, the Victoria 3 developers had, the Europeans writing down about cultures that may have been exceptionally racist, right? And gotten a lot of things wrong, but at least they wrote down what they found. In 1337, the only people writing things down about this area were some of the decentralized states of the and even then, a lot of that history was oral that just wasn't written down. So to get this level already is exceptional. And I think that just because they don't have, a bunch of white countries with just a name on it, I don't see the problem. I don't see that, this not being there is not an issue, right? It doesn't do anything. They don't do anything. It is purely so that, when you're colonizing this area, you know who you're colonizing. But that's it. It doesn't actually do anything else. Like, how is it handled very nicely in Victoria 3? Maybe I'm forgetting something about Victoria 3. It's entirely possible. I have dyspraxia. My memory is pretty bad, and I haven't played Victoria 3 in a very long time. Maybe I'm forgetting something about how colonization worked there. But from my recollection, I started colonizing, the colony slowly spread out, and occasionally I had a rebellion that was then put down. That's it. What else was there? Because I don't see how it was handled very nicely. Just seeing it on the map is not, in my opinion, handled. So if I'm forgetting something, please let me know. Moving on, though. Curious as to sources for population. Even a cursory search yields numerous sources that cite numbers significantly higher than the ones listed here, in the tens of millions more. And he goes on to post sources, 40 to 50, 25, 50 million, 47 million. So Pavi has read some of these sources, like the General History of Africa inspired them a lot. And they're very reluctant to the upper numbers of 40 to 50 million. To put it into context, the Chinese census of 1351 set a population of around 90 million people. That would mean Western Africa would have had half the population of the most densely populated region in the world at this period, which is obviously ludicrous. So, yeah, that's not the same. That's not, clearly, it can't be, right? What sources did you use? Most I've seen list significantly higher numbers. Why couldn't Mali have the population of France? France was a backwater nation in 1337. Bro, what? What are you talking about? Backwater nation, okay. Mali was causing worldwide inflation through its wealth. I know we've had a couple of centuries of Africa was just a bunch of tribes, but modern sources do not seem to corroborate this. Even sources when Europeans first arrived described large cities with large populations, not words used lightly by visitors from cities such as Venice, Genoa, or Lisbon. So if you consider France, the wealthiest region in Europe in the 14th century, a backwater nation, well, yeah, basically. Gold spending may not be the only unit to measure wealth. Because, for instance, when the Europeans started to trade directly with the African peoples, they were trading it for cloth or iron, which was very abundant in Europe and much more scarce in Western Africa. A Fistful of Shells, Western Africa, so he's citing his sources, from the rise of the slave trade, the industrial age of revolution by Toby Green is very good reading regarding the relative levels of wealth of European and African nations. So yeah, I don't know. I'm comfortable with what I see here, both population-wise. It makes sense to me. Again, I have not read this book. I've not read any of the books here, so I can't say for sure, but I am... The justification that I'm seeing here from Tinto is... It makes sense to me, right? I would definitely not put the population of Western Africa at levels like, half of China in this period. It just, no. And yeah, the arguments that are being put back again, backwater nation for France, no, just no. It is what it is, and it is not this. But that's all I have time for anyway. We have soon a Tinto talk on colonization in a couple of days. That is going to be a good time. Not for the people being colonized, but hey-ho, they don't get a say in it. We're going to be colonizing things. Portugal will be taking the gold and ivory coasts. We may be looking at a bit of... I imagine we might end up getting some maps of North America on Wednesday, because while obviously Africa was colonized, really when we're talking about the age of discovery, the age of colonization in, the EU timeline, we're mostly talking about North America. So maybe we're going to get some maps there. That would be a good time. I'm looking forward to that. Finding out how colonization works, because it surely has to be better than it is in EU4, because I don't want to see EU4's system return. Let me know in the comments what kind of colonization system you envisage, because I would be very interested here. I do think that a lot of inspiration could be taken from Victoria 3. I do think of the games that exist in Paradox's library right now, Vicky 3 does probably have the best colonization system, followed by Vicky 2. Yep, that's it. The others aren't even good. But I would like to know your thoughts, so leave them down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel would be, handy. You stay informed on everything coming out of Paradox Tinto, and I get a sub. It's a win-win. Like the video if you liked it. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye-bye.